Tap, tap, tap. Coming from beneath the tatami. He held his breath. Nothing. He laughed quietly to himself. Probably the neighbors. Thin walls, wood creaks, old building. He turned over and tried to fall back asleep. But then he heard it again. This time, not tapping. This time, a whisper. Oni-chan. The voice was soft, childlike, female, like a little girl calling to her older brother. Oni-chan, are you awake? Caleb sat bolt upright. His mouth went dry. He stared at the floor, heart pounding in his ears. Silence. He waited for minutes, unmoving. Eventually, he laid back down, convinced willing himself to believe it was just a dream. The next morning, he pushed the incident out of his mind, blamed the jet lag, the stress, maybe even sleep paralysis. He went to class, explored the area, and bought groceries at the Family Mart down the street. The building seemed normal in the daytime, a little too quiet, maybe, but peaceful. But when he passed his elderly neighbor, a tiny hunched woman in a floral kimono, she looked up at him, squinting. And in perfect English, she said, "You're the new one, aren't you?" Caleb smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, I just moved in. Room 102. Her eyes narrowed. Then she muttered something in Japanese he couldn't quite catch. He heard one word though. Double quotes KEMONO. Double quotes beast. Before he could ask what she meant, she shuffled inside and closed the door. That night, the voice returned. Louder. Clearer. "Oni-chan, it's cold down here." Caleb's stomach turned. This time, he knelt beside the tatami and pressed his ear to the floor. Nothing. He lifted the corner of the mat just slightly. There was another layer of wood beneath, old, cracked, and splintered. Something had clawed at it. His fingertips brushed against something strange, a smooth patch in the otherwise rough surface. He felt along it and froze. A finger, small, like a child's, but not human. The skin was leathery, coarse, covered in short, coarse black hair. Caleb yanked his hand back and dropped the mat. He backed away, panting. The room felt colder now, the air heavier, the corners darker. He didn't sleep that night. Just lay there, eyes wide open, watching the floor, waiting for the voice to return. And when it did, it no longer sounded like a little girl. Caleb *. The landlord didn't answer, just said, "Maybe you should not sleep so close to tatami. Try bed frame." Caleb frowned. That's not the problem. But the landlord had already turned away. That night, Caleb received a voicemail from an unknown number. It was muffled, distorted, like it had been recorded through layers of static. But there were words. "Caleb, can you hear me?" He almost dropped the phone. It was his voice, his own voice, whispering from the other side. He didn't sleep, just sat with every light on, heart pounding in his chest. And still, the voice came. But now it had many voices. His mother, his professor, his ex, even his own, all calling from under the floor. Begging. Laughing. Imitating. "You're not real," he whispered. "But we will be," they replied. The next day, Caleb made a decision. He went to the bookstore in Shinjuku and bought every book he could find on Japanese folklore, yokai, and cursed spirits. He needed to understand what was happening to him. He needed answers. And in one old, yellowing volume, buried in the folklore section, he found something, a small story, barely a paragraph, no title. There's a beast that mimics voice. It lives under floors, behind walls. It waits for those who feel alone. Once spoken to, it begins to change, and once believed, it takes their name. Caleb stared at the words underneath it. Someone had written in pencil, "Never speak to it twice." He had already spoken to it 3 times. The landlord didn't answer. Just said, "Maybe you should not sleep so close to tatami. Try bed frame." Caleb frowned. That's not the problem. But the landlord had already turned away. That night, Caleb received a voicemail from an unknown number. It was muffled, distorted, like it had been recorded through layers of static. But there were words. "Caleb, can you hear me?" He almost dropped the phone. It was his voice, his own voice, whispering from the other side. He didn't sleep, just sat with every light on, heart pounding in his chest. And still, the voice came. But now it had many voices. His mother, his professor, his ex, even his own, all calling from under the floor. Begging. Laughing. Imitating. You're not real, he whispered. But we will be, they replied. The next day, Caleb made a decision. He went to the bookstore in Shinjuku and bought every book he could find on Japanese folklore, yokai, and cursed spirits. He needed to understand what was happening. To him, he needed answers. And in one old, yellowing volume, buried in the folklore section, he found something, a small story, barely a paragraph, no title. There's a beast that mimics voice. It lives under floors, behind walls. It waits for those who feel alone. Once spoken to, it begins to change, and once believed, it takes their name. Caleb stared at the words. Underneath it, someone had written in pencil, never speak to it twice. He had already spoken to it 3 times. Caleb stopped answering to his name. He started writing it down instead on sticky notes, in notebooks, even on the back of his hand. Not to remember it, but to remind himself that it belonged to him. He had read somewhere that spirits, yokai, certain types of onryu, couldn't take you unless they knew your name, unless you gave it to them. But he had already done that twice, maybe more. He spent hours in the library researching local legends, urban myths, death records. He didn't go back to class. He barely ate, barely slept. One night, after 3 hours of combing through scanned municipal archives, he found something. A listing from 1997. Apartment 102. Tenant, Mariko Kubo. Age, 28. Missing. Presumed dead. No signs of forced entry. Below that, another name. Tenant before her, Seiji Nakahara, 34. Found dead in the unit. Cause, cardiac arrest during sleep. Position, face down on floor. Notes, wooden flooring beneath tatami heavily damaged. Scratch marks noted. And then another. Tenant, Elise Carter, 24, American. Disappeared in 2015. Last known message, it won't stop talking to me. He stared at the screen until the letters blurred. They weren't just names. They were people like him. All of them had lived in that same room, and none had made it out whole. He rushed home. This time, he pulled the tatami completely off. Underneath, rotting wood slats, dusty support beams, and something wedged between the boards, a thin, curled object. Paper? No. Fabric. He pulled it free, unraveled it, and nearly dropped it. It was a sleeve from a kimono, stained, torn, and clawed through. Inside the sleeve, he found a bundle of scraps, folded notes, torn paper, bits of photo corners, and dried ink. He opened one carefully. It learned my laugh. Another, even if you move away, it follows. And another, it becomes you from the inside. The last one was written in English. Sloppy handwriting, shaking. If you're reading this, don't speak back. Don't answer it. Don't think of it like a person. It only becomes real if you let it. E. Carter. Caleb pressed his back to the wall, staring at the hole in the floor. For the first time, he didn't hear the voice. No whispering. No tapping. Just silence. And then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. You left the door open. He looked at the tatami mat, lying folded against the wall. The hole was exposed. The wood beneath, darker now. What? Something was breathing down there. Slow, steady. Waiting. He ran. Out the door, down the hallway, down the stairs. He didn't stop until he was outside the building, panting in the cold night air. He stayed in a capsule hotel that night, but it didn't help, because at 3:33 a.m., the mirror in the capsule fogged over without steam, without reason. And written on it, in long, uneven strokes, was a single word: Caleb. He went back to the landlord the next morning, slammed the sleeve on the desk, shaking. You knew, he said. You knew what that room was. The old man didn't argue. He simply stared down at the torn fabric, then quietly, almost sadly, he said, the room doesn't belong to us anymore. What the hell does that mean? It listens, learns, grows. Every time someone speaks to it, it becomes more human. Caleb's voice dropped. What does it want? The landlord looked up, his eyes dark. It wants a name. It already has mine. Then it's almost done. Caleb bought a plane ticket that night. One way. No checked luggage. He didn't care about the fees, or the lost tuition, or the fact that he had to leave everything behind. He just wanted out of the apartment, out of Japan, out of its voice. He stayed awake until dawn in a crowded internet cafe, surrounded by the hum of machines and the dull click of keyboards. For the first time in weeks, there were no whispers, no voices underfoot. But when he went to the bathroom and passed the full-length mirror, his reflection didn't follow him. It lagged just half a second. But enough. At the airport, he avoided eye contact, avoided sitting still, avoided hearing his name. When the gate agent called Caleb West, he didn't answer. He simply showed his passport and nodded. He didn't speak. He didn't want to give it any more power. He watched the plane taxi onto the runway with a breath held so tight it ached. Somewhere over the Pacific, he slept. Just for a moment. In the dream, he was back in the apartment. Only this time, it was his body under the floor, pressing against the wood. Scratching. Screaming, while something above walked around in his face. Caleb landed in San Francisco, checked into a motel near the airport. Tried to call his mother, but she didn't answer. Instead, the voicemail kicked in. Only it wasn't his mom. It was his voice. "Hi, you've reached Caleb. Sorry I missed you." The recording kept going, longer than it should. "But I'm here now. You can come visit. I've got a place. Room 102. It's warm down here." Click. His phone buzzed again. A new text. "Unknown number. You should have stayed." He threw the phone into the motel trash. It rang anyway. Caleb stopped answering to his name entirely. He used aliases. He avoided mirrors. He taped his windows shut. He kept the lights on. But deep down, he knew. It had already learned too much. Every thought, every fear, every habit. He could feel something pulling, stretching, twinning. A slow exchange, not body for body, but voice for voice. And voices live forever. 3 weeks later, back in Tokyo, a young office worker named Naoko signs a lease for a cheap apartment. Quiet place, good location. A little old. The landlord doesn't say much, just hands her a key and mutters, "Don't damage the tatami." She doesn't ask questions, just smiles politely and bows. That night, as she's unpacking, she hears something, a whisper, "Hello." She freezes. It sounds like a man, but not a local, an American voice. "Please, help me." As she kneels down. Presses her ear to the floor. "My name is Caleb," the voice says. "Please, I'm still down here." She stares at the tatami. A single coarse black hair curls out from beneath the corner. She doesn't move, doesn't answer. But for just a second, she almost does.